some more in some countries, and quoting some constitution from some countries, taking it as a model, knowing well that actually women are not that happy. And this is very clear from what I've read. For example, in Korea's book, The Feminine Eunuch, told the woman, she herself, a feminist, has agreed that after the release of some constrained sexuality in feminist movement, women are in pain than satisfaction. I invite you to read two of her books. Area, feminine, female, eunuch, another one, total woman. Apart from knowing this genealogy, the philosophical foundation of this movement, to us to see why this has, but it does not come from the side. And all the Muslims who have participated in this, I think they did not have time to see this challenge. They didn't have the time. Next one, concerning our situation now. I think it is very good if we participate in a very diplomatic, brotherly way among all of us in solving our problems. In Islam, we call those ulul amri. And the Quran teaches you obey the ulul amri after the Prophet, after you obey God. And the verse of the Quran says, concerning matters which are sensitive to the Quran. The verse reads, I go to the taxation straight for the sake of time. If only they refer the information to the messenger and those in authority among them, those who are really able to formulate the opinion concerning the issue will know what is the correct decision. The term is Ahlul Istinbat. And let us not let our problem be decided by people outside our country. That is first. That is first, I think we try to respect that. We decide on our own brothers and sisters in our own country. And let us don't create unnecessary conflicts, because that is not going to help anybody. Sometimes people outside want to see some form of disturbance among us and give money. And then some of us follow with brothers and sisters. And then there will be a row in the middle. But the decision is not made. If there is anything, I am making another plea as a conservative student of Islamic thought, that let us enhance this intellectual culture of al-Nasiha, which is so much like the verse, the sentence from the Prophet is, religion is active attitude of sincere concern in relation to Allah, to the book, to the Prophet, leaders of Muslims and common men amongst them. Let us practice this culture of al-Nasiha, the intellectual sense, and don't create a row in the media. And don't call people outside to create a row in our country. And then causing some problems, unnecessary problems to our ulul amri, and then putting our country not in a good shape at all. I am just out of compassion. I am taking this. I'm not, directing this as a competitive move against anybody. But let us behave like what the Quran says. The Quran says, Ahmad is the messenger of Allah. And then it goes, those who are with him. Then it goes, compassionate. We have a lot of this compassion. Even among the we enjoy attacking each other. Let us enjoy practicing the culture of intellectual al-nasiha in relation to one another. So I think I would like just to stop here for some time. I would like to listen to our platform. Assalamu
I feel somewhat awkward being the last speaker after two very serious presentations, which basically means I end up being the comedian. But nonetheless, we are dealing with a subject that is, in many ways, complex. And I think the nuances of the debate have been highlighted thus far. There's really not much that I want to add to the debate per se, but rather attempt to place it in the context that this debate is emerging and the debate that we are addressing today. I don't want to sound too trivial when I say this, but I suppose in the context of geopolitics and popular political culture worldwide, across the world at the moment, I think apart from the Decepticons, Muslims are probably regarded as the biggest threat to world peace today. This is something that we see all around us. It permeates everything, from the security industry, through the media, through politics, through international governance, through geopolitics. I say this as someone who is a political analyst, who also studies the politics of history and the history of politics, and who also looks at how identities are constructed over time through history and in the political context. And I'm constantly surprised, or maybe not surprised, by how Islam has become an overdetermined signifier today. It is something that is so deeply invested with meaning that we cannot, in a sense, avoid these sorts of entanglements. And that's not necessarily the sole fault of Muslims. It's also because of the way Islam is perceived. And you might think I'm joking when I say that Muslims, people look at Islam and Muslims like Decepticons, but I'm talking from experience, someone who's engaged in many of these international debates and dialogue sessions, like Ustaz has been involved in as well. And I don't know about Ustaz Uthman's experience in Europe, but I recall many meetings, many discussions, including discussions in the European Parliament, where the question of Islam in Europe, Islam in the world, elicited responses that on any other occasion would be regarded as completely irrational. Only Islam today elicits this sort of response from academics, from politicians, from ideologues. The hysteria, the fear, the concern. You have people like Geert Wilders in the Netherlands who compares the Quran to Hitler's Mein Kampf. In fact, even calling at one point for the banning of the Quran because it's no different from the Mein Kampf, according to Mr. Geert Wilders. I'm not sure which edition he read. I have been in discussions. I recall one discussion in Berlin, jointly organized by the Muslim Society of Berlin and the Jesuit of Berlin, when we were talking about interreligious dialogue. And I remember distinctively a man, rather agitated in the audience, who afterwards stood up and addressed a question at me, and he said, you talk about Islamic justice. And he said, I have read your Quran, he says. He takes out what was the biggest Quran I've seen in my entire life, and I thought he was going to beat me to death with this Quran, And he says, I have read your Quran, and it is no different from the writings of the Nazis. So that is the sort of pressure that Muslims worldwide today are under, the constant need for us to somehow restate the meaning of this signifier. I'm very much taken by Ustaz's point about the Adamic man, the whole notion that it is human agency that names, to name. And the problem today, I believe, this is a global problem, it permeates across humanity, all societies face it, but it is acutely a problem of Muslims. To name Islam has become politically problematic for us. And it is in this context that now we are dealing with hyphenated identities. And perhaps this is where the confusion and misunderstandings and perhaps also the manipulation lies, because we cannot deny that when we talk about Islamic feminism, it's like talking about Islamic modernity. It becomes a hyphenated identity. And then all sorts of questions are asked about genealogy, about origins, about what you mean by this. My own stand on this debate is very similar to that of Farouk, and I would contest the claim that the struggle or the desire, the aspiration for equality is an alien concept to Islam. For me, the desire for justice is essentially Islamic. It is there from the genesis of Islam itself. And I thank Farouk, we have to thank Farouk for reminding us of this other genealogy that has a long history beginning with the very foundational moment of Islam itself. I'm also thankful to Zainah for raising the crucial question. Therefore, if Islam is so concerned with justice, how and why do these aberrations exist? Now, at this point, however, we have to, I think, be cautious as to not to over-specify, over-particularize Islam as if Islam's problems, and I'm talking about normative Islam, Islam as it is practiced, as it is lived. I think we have to be careful not to over-particularize the problems of the Muslim community as if they are unique to Muslims alone. The question of interpretation of faith and how faith is translated into praxis is not unique to Islam. It's there in all the religious communities of the world. But the question that Zainah raises is an important one that has to be addressed. If over the 14 centuries of the evolution of Islam, normative Islam, that has given birth to a vast corpus of laws and rules that are meant to be, on the one hand, inspired by revealed knowledge, and on the other hand, directed towards justice, why do these rules do not deliver justice in some instances? And unfortunately, the instances are many, as Zainah notes. Now, this is a problem about rules in general, about laws. Malaysia, of course, is not a lawless country. We have laws, but if, like me, you have to drive up here, from the road down there, you will notice people double parking all the time. It's not because we don't have laws in Malaysia. We have laws. These people know they're not supposed to double park, but they're double parking out there. So the breaking of laws, the abuse of laws is something that permeates societies. Our concern as Muslims who want to present a positive image of Islam is to demonstrate, not just to the external world, but to ourselves as well, that when we talk about Islam being firmly committed to social justice, this has to translate into something real, and not simply on the level of books. There's no point about having laws in books that are not translated into reality. Justice has to be practiced, it has to be embodied, it has to be exercised. In books alone, it doesn't do anything. It has to be translated into living reality. And I think this is a shared concern. I think Ustaz appeal for a common culture of nasihat among Muslims, and I believe that this is what perhaps to start off on that point, that the fundamental point that we all agree upon is this need for justice, and in particular justice when it comes to the treatment of women in Islam. Now, when we raise the question of how and why have these laws been misappropriated, abused, or failed, then again, history has to come in. Zainah touched on the point of political Islam, and basically Islam's quest for power. Well, again, that's not unique to Islam. Muslims desire power, political power, because with political power, we govern. We can govern ourselves. Muslims also desire economic power, like everybody else. Like everybody else. This is not unique to Islam. However, from the moment of Islam's arrival to its evolution today, Muslim society has changed. And I think this is the point that Zainah was trying to raise when we talk about how we have to address the reality of the world today. Muslim society has changed. To claim that Muslim society has not experienced change, I think would simply be historically inaccurate. But in Malaysia, some people say that we were never colonized. So you never know with history nowadays. But be a bit careful with history. But historically, we have evolved and changed. And what has happened, what's most evident, what should be evident to all of us here now, is that we now talk about, we're trying to discuss the fundamental principles of Islam at a very different period in Muslim history, where unlike Muslim society in its early primordial state,